All right. First, our next agenda item is delegations. Delegations intended for anyone that would like to speak about anything that's on the agenda tonight. Agenda tonight's Board of Ed's budget. So if anybody would like to speak about the agenda item, please come up to the podium, state your name and your address, and then feel free to say what it is you'd like to say.
Good evening. My name is Kate Caristo Scalora. I live on 3 Lantern Lane in Niantic, Connecticut. I am here today as the president of the Lily B. Haynes PTA. I also have 2 children at the school. I also have earned my Master's of Social Work degree from the University of Connecticut, and I have worked in my profession for 20 years. And I'm here today because, like so many families, I moved to Niantic because of the school's magnificent reputation. It's truly exceptional. And to this point, I have been very, very impressed by my experience at Lily B. Haynes. It's a fantastic school. So recently, I was very surprised when I learned that the school only has a school social worker for 2 hours per week and a part-time psychologist. I was truly stunned. Like, how could that be true? And although I've heard this information multiple times, even this morning when I was preparing my remarks, I had to call and check to make sure that I absolutely had it right. Is it really 2 hours per week, or that has to be 2 hours per day, right? Could it possibly be only 2 hours per week? But no, indeed, I was correct, just 2 hours per week. I don't find that to be the standard of an exceptional school. I find that to be an inadequate standard and unacceptable. So I'm here today to talk about that, and I hope that you'll close that gap in funding. And I have a lot of other members of the PTA here. We're all wearing pink stickers that say that we support the Board of Education budget that was presented to you. So according to the School of Social Work Association of America, research indicates that about 18 to 20% of children experience a significant mental illness that has a major impact upon their lives. And in fact, schools are often the first setting where a mental illness is identified. So we can't underestimate the value of early intervention and the value of having social work and psychologists available on staff to help support these students. Just some of their functions include designing school programs that promote a positive school climate for all students, helping students identify their social, emotional, and mental health needs, creating interventions, conflict resolutions, and counseling to students in need, and working with students to identify community resources. So there are currently 297 students at Lily B. Haynes School. How could a social worker that is only available for 2 hours per week and a part-time psychologist meet all of those needs? And even after we consider the time that is needed for both of these individuals to accomplish their expected daily tasks, we have to also consider that what happens if the school experiences a crisis or the students experience some sort of stressor. They need flexibility within their schedules to also accommodate those needs. And just to provide you with a practical example, my 5-year-old daughter recently overheard news coverage of the national walkout on March 14th. She heard a person being interviewed say just a very short bit of words, but they said, "Students are being shot. Even elementary school students have been killed." Needless to say, after hearing that statement, I had to spend quite a bit of time answering my daughter's questions, and I was left with no other choice but to have a lengthy conversation about school shootings and school safety. I'm really concerned that my daughter may experience some anxiety at school after hearing such frightening information. And I wonder if she does experience that anxiety, what happens to her when she's at school? One thing I'm certain of is if the school social worker and psychologist are actually on site, if she had that anxiety, they would most likely not have the time to help her with her needs, that they would be addressing the needs of the most critical students. So who would help my daughter? Would her teacher take time from the classroom instruction to talk with her? And I assume that conversation might occur in front of other students, then possibly causing other students more anxiety. Or perhaps she would go to the nurse. Would the nurse be able to help her process her feelings while she's also trying to help evaluate symptoms of the flu, a stomach virus, and other playground injuries? And we all can agree that that's not adequate. And sadly, I don't believe that this is a hypothetical what-if situation. I'm sure that this type of scenario plays out more frequently than we all know. And I'm hoping that the Board of Finance will close this gap in services and support the proposed budget by the Board of Education, which calls for an increase in funding to school social workers at Lily B. Haynes School and a full-time psychologist. I thank you for your consideration, and I hope that you are able to support the budget.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to come and speak in front of delegations?
Hello, my name is Liz Dumond, and I live at 10 Acorn Drive.
Thank you.
I just want to piggyback briefly off of what Kate spoke of. I'm coming to you as a parent of a Lily B student, third grader, and a middle school student at the middle school. I'm also coming to you as an educator in a local town, a town that has had a social worker as on staff for, I believe, 5 years, and every elementary school has a full-time school psychologist. As a classroom teacher, having been in the exact type of situation that Kate described, that's exactly what happens. The teacher is forced to triage the situation and basically say, do I have the time right now to deal with this issue, or is there a resource available to me that I can quickly, put my hands on, whether it's a quick email to somebody or the principal or somebody that's available to handle the situation. If we had a full-time school psychologist and the part-time social worker available at the schools, that would be an incredible resource that would help the teacher in that situation. So I can't emphasize enough. I too, when we moved here, came here for the reputation of the schools and was pretty shocked to realize that we don't even have full-time school psychologists, not to mention the need for social workers in the school. So I urge you to please support this budget and include the social worker and the full-time psychologist. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else that would like to speak relative to delegations?
Good evening. Paul Daigle, 5 Riverhead Lane. I'm here today as representing as co-founder and vice president of the Brian Daigle Foundation to share some additional statistics with you regarding the mental health well-being of our students. And this information comes from the National Alliance on Mental Illness. In addition to what was stated previously, 11% of youth have mood disorders, 10% have a behavior or a conduct disorder, and 8% suffer from an anxiety disorder. But one of the statistics here is that 50% of all lifetime mental illnesses begin at the age of 14. 75% begin by the age of 24. And on average, it takes someone with a mental illness 10 years before they receive any type of treatment. So the addition of 2 social workers and a half-time psychologist to get it full-time is a tremendous need for our school system. What our children deal with each and every day, what the teachers in the classroom do, the resources pale into comparison to what's needed. The budget you'll see, there's other statistics, I won't repeat them, that'll be presented to you. I commend the administration and the Board of Education for seeing this need and putting forward a budget that will fill it. Our foundation runs a program called Lax to Live at the high school, where we surveyed both the girls and boys lacrosse teams last spring. 50% of the members of those teams stated either they or a friend or a family member was struggling with their mental well-being. The need is there, and I encourage you all to please support this budget and support these resources that our schools and, more importantly, that our students need. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to speak under delegations?
Hi, my name is Almarie Chacon, and I have 2 children in the school system. I have 1 child in Lily B. Haynes.
Your address, please?
17 South Beechwood Road, Niantic.
Thank you.
I just want to just quickly mention that as it is now, the amount of hours that we have of a social worker and a school psychologist are taken up by all the children that are currently on IEPs and 504s and other special ed programs. So already they're being stretched out with these children they're legally bound to receive support. And it doesn't leave a lot of room for the children who may not have an IEP or any sort of special ed support, but do need the social support and psychologist support. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry. Anybody else who want to speak for delegations? Anyone else? Okay, thank you. New business. Budget review, Board of Education.
Hi, good evening. I'm Tim Hagan, Chair of the East Lyme Board of Education for this year. And let's see, I just wanted to introduce, Candace Carlson is here from the board. She's our chair of our AAA committee. Jamie Shelburne is here, who's the chair of our policy committee. I don't see any other board members. We have our full administrative team, and I'll let our superintendent introduce them. But we're glad to be here. I do have some good news. The good news is that tomorrow at 2 o'clock at the high school auditorium, we'll be opening the bid packages for the renovations of Lily B. Haynes and Niantic Center. And we're hoping that those numbers are going to come in nice and low. So everybody's got their fingers crossed. The Flanders bid packages will come in a couple of weeks. It lags behind. And we're making great progress. The building committee is doing a fantastic job. And our efforts to really come forward with a really good plan for redistricting of the 3 elementary schools is proceeding very, very well. We had a major review from the consultant company that we hired to look at, and they're doing a fantastic job. So the details of that are available on our website, and we'll be deliberating some of that information a little bit further as we move along. The reason I just bring this up is that the community making an investment in our elementary schools and doing that just is another indicator of how important our school system is to the community of East Lyme. And through the years, the East Lyme has definitely done a very good job trying to maintain the quality of our educational system, enhance it, make it better, but also to make things efficient and to keep the taxpayer in mind as well. And I think we've done a remarkably good job. We are blessed in having some great teachers, great administrative team, great parents, and great children. So I mean, it all kind of comes together when you have all those folks that are pulling together, and especially Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance that have been working so hard. This year we this is the second year, but we basically did a zero-based budgeting practice. Our superintendent got the ball moving very early in the fall, and that was really helpful for the full board as well as the administrative team. And so by the end of last year, we had already had 2 budget workshops and really had a lot of our serious deliberations around areas where we could save, areas that we felt that needed to be addressed. And so when we went into our budget deliberations in January, it was pretty straightforward because we had such a good long running start in the process. The board unanimously adopted the budget recommendations that came from the superintendent, and really it came from the superintendent, but with an enormous amount of input from the board as well. And again, that was through those workshops. So I just wanted to give those little pieces of information to you. We appreciate the complexity of the job that you have before you. We also appreciate the complexity that we have with the state budget situation. and trying to understand exactly where all that's going to come down. But we definitely feel that the budget that we brought forward is the right thing to do for our community for the coming year. So with that, I'll introduce our superintendent, Mr. Jeffrey Newton, and he will walk you through our budget presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Hagan. Again, Jeff Newton, Superintendent of Schools and resident here in East Lyme, 53 Arbor Crossing. I'm proud to stand before you in representation of everyone that is here this evening to support our proposed budget to you and our adopted budget by the Board of Education. A lot of effort, a lot of hard work went into this budget right from the get-go, which starts really end of September or early October. And I want to commend the Board of Education, commend all of our administrators, our administrative team, teachers, staff members, all had a hand in this. And Dr. Hagan mentioned zero-based budgeting. We'll talk about that in a little bit, because that's an important part of the process that we went through to get to where we are here months later. So I have a PowerPoint presentation. You have the slides in front of you. I'll direct your attention to slide number 2. And just our presentation purpose, it's important to outline these 3 areas that has been the focus from the start of when we began our work preparing this budget. And that's making sure that we clearly communicate and we gain support and commitment with the process and what we've presented. The zero-based budgeting component factors in heavily, where we're not just taking the previous year's budget and rolling it over and pushing it forward. We're building from the ground up to ensure and adhere to fiscal responsibility. And there we go, lost my slide. Last one there, also we have to have a complete focus to our district mission statement, as well as our long-range plan, our new long-range plan. We are in year 1 of that 5-year plan, and there's some 3 main focus goals that are part of that we are working towards. And we'll talk some about one of those goals in particular. With the district mission and those 3 long-range goals, you can see that everything that we do has to be driven by that district mission. And I'll draw your attention to goal number 3, the student-centered learning. We've had a few of our members here in the public speak about some of our initiatives as it pertains to social workers and school psychologists. We're going to talk about those as they relate directly to that goal 3, student-centered learning. So here is our number. I'm sure you're well aware of the percent increase over the previous year that we have brought forward. The Board of Ed unanimously adopted a 2.59% increase for the 18-19 school year. And to give you a little bit of history, on slide number 5, you can see some of our previous budgets. The last 3 years, we've really worked hard to streamline our budget process. Last year, or for this current year, and for next year, the zero-based budgeting component has really been the driving force with this, and it's allowed us to better prepare, streamline, as well as bring forth a budget that supports the needs of our school district. And we've done that, and as you can see the trend over the last few years, and we've gone from back in 2016 with a 4.68 down to where we're at now, a 2.59. And you can see the support of the Board of Education for the last 2 years, and we're hoping for your support as well as we move forward with this proposed increase. Fixed increases, or fixed expenses, I should say, are a huge part of any district operating budget. The 2 key members of that, or your components of that, are your contracts and your health insurance, which entails your salaries. So salaries and health insurance are really the 80% of this budget. We outlined a few others in relation to some operating expenses, utilities, liability insurance, leases, plant maintenance, and some contracted services, which all tie in to really bring forth a 96, almost 97% of our budget really is around fixed costs. So that leads us to cost-saving measures and avoidance measures. These are some key areas. I mentioned the zero-based budgeting, building from the ground up. That was first and foremost, identifying what it is that we need for our budget, not just rolling over from the previous year and pushing forward. Our food service program change, Previous years, we've had a contracted service with Chartwells. We were hemorrhaging money, and the operating budget was helping to cover the cost of that program. $30,000 was previously in the budget to cover that cost. We've been able to eliminate that. This time last year, our food service program was in the red by about $37,000, $38,000. To date, we just researched it this morning, we're almost $20,000 to the good. So that's a huge swing. Allows us to eliminate, operating budget expenses, helping to cover the cost of, a food service program. High deductible health plan. I know our claims are up. Mrs. Johnson, at your last meeting, talked about claims. But if we hadn't rolled over to a high deductible health plan with staff, our health insurance costs would have been even higher. So I think that was a good move that we did a few years back. We've got almost everybody rolled over to that. Ongoing software and curriculum contract consolidation. Our assistant superintendent and team members have taken what was at the school levels, where schools were and staff were going out and finding and identifying curricular and software contracts, bringing them up to the central office level to be able to take advantage of sharing of those services across all of the schools. Has some savings there. We talked about that last year. That continues. Switching from oil and propane to natural gas, rolling the buildings over. Flanders is online to go with the school projects. Our central office has already rolled over to natural gas, so there's savings there. District-wide professional development. Previously, we've pushed staff out to receive professional development services at a cost. We're trying to bring that in, so bringing PD in-house and getting more bang for our buck in servicing our teachers and our professional staff with in-house professional development. District-town collaboration. We have worked very hard this year, and you're aware of the town having a 10-year maintenance plan developing, and as well as the Board of Ed developing a 10-year maintenance plan, trying to merge those in some ways to share costs, such as air handler replacement. If you got something at the senior center, something at one of our schools, if they're on the same schedule, we could replace at the same time. Additionally, we looked at snow plowing. It's minimal, but around $19,000. We looked at that. On average, we contract out for some assistance, working with the town as we look forward to next year. This year has been a tough year, but we're working to share some of those services and those costs. And then Medicaid reimbursement. Our Special Services Department has worked hard to identify more Medicaid reimbursement as part of a recent audit that we did at the Special Services level. In this slide, you really could just, and I've said this a couple times in previous presentations, really try and stamp regional across this slide, because all of these areas are things that we're continuing to try and look at with other districts. It presents challenges with many of them, but health insurance consortiums. Are there opportunities for larger consortiums as we move into the future for savings? I put food services up there because maybe there's some opportunities. Salem was part of one of our presentations about our own food services director now and getting rid of a contracted services to save money. They were inquiring about, well, maybe in the future we could share our food service director with them, so as a savings and dollars in our pocket per se. Student transportation, sharing, traveling with smaller buses for students who require specialized placements. Sometimes you have, like Waterford, for instance, and we had some conversations with Waterford. If they're sending a bus and a student to an off-site location, maybe we're doing the same thing in a nearby location or that location. Why wouldn't we share that service at half the cost? It's generally $50,000 to transport a child for an out-district placement. Very expensive, so sharing that could save quite a bit of money. And I won't go through all of those other ones. I will mention Coastal Connections. We are continue to look at tuition-paying students to come into Coastal. One just started at the Coastal Connections program. So those are tuition-based dollars that are coming into play. So we're trying to expand in those areas as well. Additionally, this is kind of a two-part slide. The top part with new student registration process. We know, and I'm looking at what's in front of you with all the paper, and I know I brought paper tonight, but we're really trying to lessen the amount of paper that is going out. Case in point, registration of new students. There's a packet of paper when you register your child. I just did it this summer with my wife, and we had 3 packets of tons of paper all over our dining room table. Registration has now been moved online, thanks to some of our central office staff members and the direction of our assistant superintendent. Have done a great job of streamlining that to an online registration process to save on paperwork. And when those parents come in as the final step in that process, we always ask them the question, what brings your family to East Lyme? And the most common response is the school district's reputation, for a quality educational program. We hear it all the time. We're proud of that, and we need to continue to keep that going. We need to continue to draw families into our town, draw families into purchasing homes in our town, while we continue to focus on a strong educational system for East Lyme. That leads us to some enrollment information. I know lots of questions out there about enrollment. Dr. Hagan mentioned the firm that helped us with our redistricting is helping us with our redistricting. We're still in the middle of that. They have done a phenomenal job in outlining our numbers. So I've got 2 slides for you I want to show. This one, slide 10, is just really a schematic of a line graph of where we are projected to go with a high, medium, and low assessment. We're really kind of focusing on that medium level. And that really kind of depicts what the most likely scenario will be for East Lyme as we move forward in the next 10 years. So when you look at those numbers as well, by 2027-28, we're projected to be back up over 3,000 students, which I think is great. It's where we need to be, where we want to be, and it supports our school projects initiative with renovating 3 elementary schools. And it's drawing families into our town, and that's because of our education that we provide to students. Student services. We have had in 17-8, this current year and last year, roughly the same number of students that are identified under special education that require direct individual services through an individual education plan or program. We have across our DIRG, the fewest amount of students that are outplaced, which is very costly. We provide some very comprehensive services in-house, which is a big savings. One outplacement, as you may or may not be aware, could be to the tune of $100,000 for a child. Tack on the $50,000 for travel as well, because we're mandated to provide that transportation. That's $150,000 times a number of students. And some districts have well into the 20s or 30 students that are our size, that of students that are outplaced. That's a lot of money, millions of dollars. We don't. We have much smaller numbers. We're proud of that. We're working to maintain the current level of staffing that we have to support those students, continuing to give them training. This year in particular, we're providing literacy training as well as training around individualized education plans and the writing and the implementation of those. We're also looking at a staff time study. How we allocate our staff, our paraprofessionals, our IAs and TAs. How do we allocate them across our schools? And then also potentially some tuition through our 18 to 21-year-old program. We're mandated to provide services for students if agreed to through a PPT and IEP process up to the age of 21. So we're looking potentially at maybe some tuition-based students as part of that program, and that program is housed at the middle school. Previously, it was housed off-site. We moved it this year to our middle school, in the basement of our middle school. So that leads us to some of our district-wide initiatives and identified needs, for the future of our schools. I want to just start first by mentioning safety. We are, as everybody knows and is well aware of, we're in a time of needing to continue to provide the safest schools, and we have very safe schools. And wanted to just share a little bit of information on that. For this current year, we repurposed greeters. We had greeters at the 3 elementary schools and a greeter at the middle school, and then we had campus safety officers at the high school, and our director of safety and security was housed at the high school previous to this year. This year, we repurposed those greeters, and we brought forth campus security staff members who are now present, who are doing the job of monitoring the traffic flow in and out of the buildings, checking all the doors around the building, doing cycled walks. So we have ramped up that security, and I just was at a meeting last week with about 20 to 25 superintendents and asking them, from our region here, Southeastern Connecticut, We have, from what everyone said, we have the highest amount and the most highest level of security across all of our schools. Most districts don't have anything at the elementary level. They have an officer that might walk through their school, and they have an SRO at the high school and maybe at the middle school level. But we have each of our buildings, our 3 elementary schools, our middle school and high school, have a campus safety person. But that doesn't get to the core of what we're dealing with when we're trying to support students. That provides a robust safety element, but when we look at and talk about the social worker component and the school psychologist component, which is I'll take you back to that goal number 3 in our long-range plan, this is where our focus is for this year. We have a measurable outcome in that goal number 3, and you can see it there on that slide, identifying the social and emotional needs of our students and determine supports needed to develop their social and emotional well-being. That's an important focus and is driving us forward for the next 4 years, because we're in year 1 of our long-range plan. We have a promise to students that's up there as well, and really working to better improve the home-to-school connection that is out there, present, but needs to be improved and increased. As you know, as a town, we don't have a robust youth services bureau that runs during the summer, that runs in full during the school year. We have Dave Putnam as a Park and Rec director who does a great job and does what he can with what he has for supports, but we don't have a robust program like our counterparts in Old Lyme next door, Waterford next door, most towns that have a youth services division. We don't have that. So that leads us to what a crisis is, and some crisis data I want to present to you. Just defining what a crisis is, so have a clear understanding of what we deal with when we're talking about a student who may be dealing with a significant crisis. It's those 4 items: suicidal thoughts or plans, escalated behavior for a prolonged period of time, depression, and suspected abuse or neglect. We respond the best we can, and we do a great job of it, but we use counselor intervention. We use our current staffing, and